We continue today our Sutta exploration series. And for today's theme, I wanted to highlight a certain incident, a certain dialogue that you've heard me mention many times before over the course of years now. And the one that I'm referring to is the reference to the holy life and the true and genuine Kalyānamitta. What does that mean? Kalyānamitta. We hear about it. We've read it, upon it. We've heard it mentioned so many times, and it's quite an inspiring term, phenomenon that we have in this sasana. The spiritual friend. What is that? What does that entail? And for today's sutta, it's I've rarely done this. Maybe once or twice I've done that in the past, where I've joined two suttas in one session. Today happens to be one of those, where I will join two suttas from the Samyutta Nikaya, and they're almost identical suttas, which makes it easier for me to go through them in one sitting, one session. But they also pertain to very, very good Kalyanamittas from the sasana's life. And specifically, I'm referring to Venerables Sāriputta and Venerable Ānanda. And so these are from the Samyutta Nikaya, or the Connected Discourses, the last book, which is a vast library, even though we call it just a book. It has 5 books, the Samyutta Nikaya. And this one is from the last book, and it's number 45.2 and 45.3, Samyutta Nikaya, SN 45.2 hyphen 3, 45.3. So it is from the Mahavagga Samyutta, which is the last, as I mentioned, the big book. But just to say a few words about Kalyānamitta, or what is the holy life about. This is a unique quality of this sasana. It's a very unique term that was introduced by Lord Buddha. But not just a term, I would say, it's the reality of what that means, the embodiment of the term. We have in the Mangala Sutta, if you recall, the very first verse starts with Lord Buddha saying, as to the source of true happiness, great fortune. What is the great fortune? The Deva is asking. What is that? Because people and Devas alike are always in this struggle to gain the great fortune. What is that? Some people go after money, some people go after status, some people go after physical appearance, health, youth, eternal life, relationships, having loved ones, having many, many children and offspring, good offspring who are healthy, all these things. People have different, understandings of great fortune. And Lord Buddha starts with the very first verse being all about the company we keep. Oddly enough, in today's society, that's the last thing we think of, isn't it? We never ponder that point. We never consider the relevance of that in our lives, how important that is. The people we associate with, the individuals we like to listen to or ask or confide in, ask about their opinion about this and that. We never investigate the very spine of reality of such a person or such an interaction between such a person and ourselves. Sometimes it's memories, sometimes it's loving memories, sometimes it's cozy feelings. And we stop the inquiry right there because we say, no, this person, this thing, there's a too strong of a bond between us. So yes, I don't agree with them. Yes, but I have to maintain that for the sake of, well, essentially for the sake of dead past or ideas, speculations. You do not find that in the meaning of Kalyānamitta, however. There is no speculation involved at all in this Dhamma and discipline. The essence of Lord Buddha's teaching does not have any room for speculation. It's very real, it's practical, it's real. It's true. That's why it's called Saddhamma also. And those qualities are also found within a true, genuine Kalyānamitta, the apex of which, the true embodiment of which we find in the example of the Buddha himself. We will see how in the sutta, actually both of these suttas, Lord Buddha refers to himself as that, the embodiment of Kalyanamittas. But by extension, every one of us who practices the Dhamma, inspired by the Dhamma, and maybe you can just share one or two words as to what the Dhamma meant for you or what it has done for you, and the changes and the transformations that have occurred in you and in your life. You might share that with someone through action, through words, even through thought. At that moment, you are doing the Kalyānamitta task. You are a Kalyānamitta for all intents and purposes, as far as this Dhamma is concerned. Even though when we see the term, we see Lord Buddha, but we also see a bhikkhu, usually. A bhikkhu who is living and teaching the Dhamma. Specifically, someone who's teaching you how to develop meditation, how to develop in your dana, how to develop in your sila, how to develop in your samadhi, how to develop in your understanding, development of, deepening of your wisdom. A person who is playing that part, very, very, very important part in one's life, renders them as true Kalyānamitta. Now, we might have such a person or such people in our lives in the world, but we might not. Nevertheless, the next tier, you would say, you would call it, would be practitioners in relation to one another. That also makes the individual into a Kalyānamitta oneself, despite the fact that you are not a bhikkhu, for example. It doesn't matter at that point, because the embodiment of the Dhamma through your thoughts, words, and actions, how you inhabit your mind, how you inhabit your heart, your emotions, your life, your actions, they're not facetious, they're not superficial, they are, as in the Theragatas we see so many times, both in private and in public. That's how you carry yourself, as if nobody else exists. You are the embodiment of the Dhamma as far as you're concerned, as far as your ability to understand and go as deep as you can. Nevertheless, that does make you into a Kalyānamitta to another who is thirsty for the Dhamma. If you take two very faintly flickering candles in the dark and put them next to each other, they become brighter than they would when they're by themselves. It's quite a magnificent thing, really. So, and when you light up the whole place, you can't help but to also be lighting up your life. So it's not a matter of you going out of your world or going out on a limb and doing things by forgetting yourself. That is not Kalyānamitta, because what a Kalyānamitta does is it enhances your own drive to deepen your own understanding and practice and life within the Dhamma itself. So that person becomes the inspiration for you. They become the fuel to develop your understanding and to develop joy in your life, to develop metta in your life, to develop dana in your life. And when you're living with sila, you become a fireball of Dhamma, not just a flickering faint candle. But I won't take more time from these beautiful suttas, so I want to just dive in. So this is first one we'll do obviously in order. So 45.2. It is the Upaḍḍha Sutta, and I translate it as making up half, and you'll see why. It's from the Mahavagga Samyutta, and then from the Magga Samyutta and the Avijjavagga section on ignorance, where we get this sutta, Upaḍḍha Sutta. So let's begin. 45.2. Making up half. This is what I personally heard. Once, the Blessed One was living in the Sakyan country, near a town by the name of Nagaraka. It was during that time that one day, the Venerable Ānanda went and approached the Blessed One. And after having paid his respects, he sat to one side and made this statement while addressing the Blessed One. Bhante, having true and genuine spiritual companions should truly be considered half of this holy life. That is, when one is blessed with having true and genuine friends who are authentic in their kindness, uncompromising in their goodness and encouraging support, as well as in their unrelenting willingness to help one on the path. Very straightforward statement from someone you could tell has been benefiting from such a spiritual friend. And Venerable Ānanda, he has had a very prominent, notable spiritual friends. One was Venerable Punnamantani, because of whom he attained to the first stage of awakening, Venerable Ānanda. He became a Sotapanna because Venerable Punnamantani taught him the Dhamma, how to penetrate the Dhamma. And that was his awakening. That's how he ended up having the Dhamma eye, Dhamma Chakku. He saw. But then, for the greater part of his life, he had his second teacher, other than Lord Buddha. Perhaps you can say his third teacher. And that was Venerable Sāriputta, who had been like his mother, like his teacher. He's always there, like a nurse, nursing mother to him. So he had these powerful Kalyanamittas to support his claim by or upon. So he's saying, this is half of the path, Bhante. The half of the holy life is associating with Kalyānamitta. And finding such a powerful presence, someone who can pull you in when you have drifted away. And life will drift you away. Ideas will drift you away. Different things will pull you away. Even in the name of Dhamma, oftentimes. That's why the sneakiest tools that Mara uses are via the Dhamma itself. Quasi-Dhamma, that is. Involvements in this and that, but the real Kalyānamitta will pull on your ears, will pull you back into the Dhamma, will bring you back to what really matters. Where you know life is so precious. You cannot afford to waste any more time. So he's saying it's 50%, Bhante, half. And let's see what Lord Buddha says. That is not so, Ānanda. Truly not so, Ānanda. And why do I say this? It is because, Ānanda, having true and genuine spiritual companions is considered the entirety of this holy life. That is, when one is blessed with having true and genuine friends who are authentic in their kindness, uncompromising in their goodness, and encouraging support, as well as in their unrelenting willingness to help one on the path. I remember when I first read this, it shocked me. The whole, the entire holy life equals the Kalyānamitta's relationship and vice versa? How is that possible, I asked. After all, Ānanda, Lord Buddha continues, when a bhikkhu does in fact have true and genuine friends who are authentic in their kindness, uncompromising in their goodness and encouraging support, as well as in their unrelenting willingness to help him, then this itself leads the bhikkhu to seriously dedicate his energy to cultivating himself while developing through the Noble Eightfold Path. What is the middle path? We like to use that term a lot. We throw that term here and there to describe the Dhamma, describe Buddhism, the middle path. But what is that? It is the Noble Eightfold Path. Very unpretentious, very simple in many ways, but one that can only be embodied by each and every one of our lives. We have this life, and it cannot be, the Noble Eightfold Path cannot be manifested anywhere other than in our own individual lives. Nowhere else, not in your ideas, not in your hopes of a better future. One day, that one day over the horizon, that rainbow-covered one day will never come. It will never come because it's all speculative. It's all fake, ultimately, despite the colors, the fragrances that we put on them. Ideas, rose-colored, means nothing, Lord Buddha would say. And that's what a noble Kalyānamitta does. And that's another term for it, nobility. They're truly noble. They might not have all the pizzazz, all the bells and whistles of somebody that you think should be Kalyānamitta. They might be very humble. They might be very, or they might not be so humble. They might be so shocking, jolting. And that's another thing. They need to jolt us into the reality of what is happening. If somebody's standing there at the on a ledge, it's very similar to somebody standing on a high-rise building right at the edge of a, you've probably seen this in movies or heard about them, where a person wants to commit suicide. To me, it is no different than somebody wasting their life. And for that reason, I use the metaphor of standing on a ledge, on a cliff, and there's the abyss on the other side. Our ideas will take us there. Our speculative ideas about what the Dhamma is or is not. A true Kalyānamitta comes and shakes you to reality, pulls you back and says, are you stupid? Enough. This is it. You're standing on the present. You are here. This is so precious. Look at your pulse. You feel your skin. You're alive. So who cares if you don't look or feel like you hoped you would? Or the ideas you held about yourself at this age to be at this level or this thing or this achievement, this. Compare, measuring and contrasting is a poison in the mind. Kalyānamitta comes in and jolts you. That's why they give you life. That's why Lord Buddha is saying they are the entirety of life, of the holy life. You look around and what do you see in the world? Dhamma that is disappearing. But fortunately, we do have the Dhamma in reality. It's there, even if it's a small pocket. Even if you find a tiny little pebble, a tiny little nugget of gold, pure gold, 24-karat gold, when it used to be a whole entire ocean of gold, it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter at all, because that essence of that gold is still gold, pure gold. The amount doesn't matter. What you do with it matters. So are there any Kalyanamittas in your life? There are. If there aren't, why aren't you looking for them? Why aren't you? And your life, how you lead your life, definitely has a lot to do with the attracting of that oxygen into your life, because that's what Kalyānamitta is life. We consider food more important than oxygen. It's not supposed to be so. You stop breathing, you die. Whether you're sitting in front of a feast full of food you like or not, you will die because you don't have oxygen. You don't have air. Well, I will tell you that there is something that is even more valuable than air. That's your Kalyānamitta. Because many times we've come and gone and we were four-legged animals. We were petas, we were hungry ghosts. In misery, utter misery. But still, that was better than living in the hell realms, which are impossible to describe in suffering. So we've gone through these so many cycles. That's why I say having a true Kalyānamitta is better than air that we breathe, without which we die. Because as a four-legged animal, we did breathe, you know. We did breathe. But where did that take us? More and more experiences, and then we die. One has to come to that understanding of pain and suffering truly on a personal, intrinsic, visceral level to understand and appreciate. At that point, we can truly see the value of the Dhamma. It's not some other thing that it's like joining some type of a church choir or some type of a reading group or readers club or something. It's not like that. It's not a religion as such. It's reality. It's your life. It's life and death. It's more than that, in fact, because the cycles of birth and death, seeing that is true understanding of dukkha. It's true understanding of anicca. It's true understanding of anatta. That all these clothes that I keep wearing, I once was a four-legged animal, now I am this, I don't know, a beautiful female deva, for example, or male deva. Wow, I'm Sakka. Wow. I'm a Brahma, like we saw in Baka, who thought he was the absolute. He never dies, he thought, because he had seen so many worlds come and go. And he thought, well, I guess I am the overlord. I never die. Until Lord Buddha showed up and he said, no, you need just to zoom out a little bit and see your day is coming too. And when you fall, you're going to fall lower than you thought possible. So in that cosmic sense, we have to understand our role here and break away from this outline that we have for ourselves as this is me, this is who I am, this is my life, these are my concerns, these are my worries, these are my hopes to achieve. No, we go beyond that. We look at the big picture. That's why our goal is not to gain rebirth into a heavenly realm like other religions, or even within the Buddhist religion that eventually created all these different deviations and sub-traditions. No, Lord Buddha never encouraged us to hope for a rebirth into a heavenly realm. And that is what the Kalyānamitta also reminds us of. Freedom, true freedom comes from that. Bhakka, the Brahma God, despite the fact that he lived for trillions of years, he was very much chained up. He's imprisoned, you know. Any deva who believes, who wants to continue living in that luxury, in that pleasure world for millions of years, is in fact in Alcatraz, serving time in pleasure. There is such a thing. And that's the worst, because you cannot see the chains on you. You cannot see the barbed wires. You cannot see the metal bars that keep imprisoning you in pleasure. But a person who wants to see or practice the Dhamma is a person who has seen the futility of such a life. That's why you had so many devas also who came to listen. They left the pleasure-filled universes they occupied, and they came to listen to, well, they came to India. They came, they sat, they were there, hovering around Lord Buddha. That's why so many of them were crying when Lord Buddha was about to die. The urgency, that's what we're talking about. So the Kalyānamitta is a person who pulls you into that sense of urgency, wakes us up. And that's why there's so few. And that's why they're so valuable. That's why in the Mangala Sutta, Lord Buddha says to associate with the wise and not with the fool. That is the biggest source of great fortune. Not your money, not your spouse, not your looks, not your health, not your children, not your whatever. All those things come and go, but this makes all the difference because they go beyond this life's boundaries. The Kalyānamitta is invested in your welfare beyond this world. Imagine that. You go to Harvard, you graduate from it with an MBA or this or that. Okay, it's for this life. If you are playing your cards right, as they say, you invest this and that. Let's say you're a top CEO. Okay, but this is related with this life under certain circumstances and conditions. What if your body breaks down? What if you don't have the memory? Alzheimer's kicks in. Poof, all that is gone. Transitory, impermanent, gone. The holy life, however, is for good. That's why the Arahant does his thing and is done with life, completely freed, with the depth of understanding. Let me continue. And in what manner, Ānanda, can the Bhikkhu, who does have true and genuine friends, seriously dedicate his energy to cultivating himself while developing through the Noble Eightfold Path? Here, Ānanda, the Bhikkhu develops in himself the right view, while faithfully dedicating himself to the training through his relentless and persevering energy, steadily deepening his practice in seclusion, which leads him to experience dispassion and cessation, all of which culminate into the full experience of release. There's a few terms here. Effort. There is seclusion. there is the development of dispassion, which leads to cessation, nirodha. Dispassion is viraga. Viraga means not to be lusting after enjoyments, lusting after one after the other pleasure. But that's what the world is offering us all the time, promising us, if we do this, then that's what we're going to get. But we are constantly disappointed. You get this? Okay, well, where's the promise? It ceases, it ends. But craving is always there to convince you to jump to the next bait, to the next thing, to the next thing, until you've lived a 70, 80-year life. And it's gone. How? Well, because it was just jumping from one promise, empty promise, to the next. But not having right view means the person will continue to do that. But once a person does have right view, which is the very first of the Noble Eightfold Path, then everything changes. The whole thing crumbles. The whole charade falls. The whole ruse, the whole trick. This is all Mara's trickery, by the way. You discover it. You disclose it. You reveal it. And that revelation already means that you are on the right path, because you are becoming less and less dependent on false views. And so long as it is not the right view, everything is false view. That's why there is a lot of Ādhamma in the world that sell themselves as Dhamma. It comes in the right packaging and all that, but when you open it, it's not the right Dhamma. It's like forgery. Somebody's selling you. I remember when I used to, in my early 20s, used to live in Los Angeles, and I would walk around certain parts of downtown Los Angeles to go and get the bus to take me home. And I would see sometimes people, trying to sell gold on the street. Meanwhile, 1 block away, there's the gold district where you actually have legitimate stores selling, businesses selling gold. But this person over there is trying to sell you gold on his arm, like holding it like this and saying, hey, I can sell you this for $30. Meanwhile, for that size, that weight, if it's really gold, it would easily be 3,000. That's what the world is doing. It's fake. It's counterfeit. So wise is the person who uses the body, uses their mind, the brain, their emotions, their understanding, and especially their time, which is an asset that can never be taken back once you give it away, once you lose it. That is the urgency part. That's why it's so important. So am I pursuing counterfeit Dhamma or am I not? Anything that gives us more responsibility to play our part in our life, to do the right thing, meaning starting with right view. And right view, you have to look at what the Buddha said. What did he teach? Not what some other person is saying. Oh, yes, the Buddha said this. Okay, instead of taking it at face value, just do just a little bit of digging. Fortunately, we have the internet. It's all there. This is here also. The suttas, the teachings. You can cross-reference. You can look it up. Every single thing I'm saying, you can look it up. It's the sutta. That's why we're doing the Pali, which allows you to get closer and closer to right view. And when asked, what is right view? You need to have yoniso manasikara, placing the attention where it's supposed to be instead of lying to yourself, deceiving yourself, and the voice of a true Kalyānamitta explaining to you. And the best Kalyānamitta is Lord Buddha. And you have your own life as your laboratory. Test out what the Buddha said. Noble Eightfold Path, every single one of those steps are testable. But on where? Where am I going to test it? In your life. Starting with right view, yes, but even with right speech, which we'll get to in a second. If I use bad speech, does that bring joy and happiness and contentment and camaraderie and friendship in people? No. For starters, it creates havoc in me. It creates agitation. It creates remorse and regret because the person now is crying because of what I said. You don't have to believe in the Buddha to understand what just happened. So that drives a person towards right view because now you're saying, I don't like what my actions created. So I'm going to change. So now you choose a wholesome action. Very practical, very real, very doable. That's why it's so wonderful. It's so simple of a formula, the Noble Eightfold Path. Arahantship will be attained while you are practicing the Noble Eightfold Path. It's not going to come by the grace or some revelation from a divine realm or some teacher. No. The Buddha never gave anybody enlightenment, awakening. Never. Each person who attained liberation attained through their own effort. Period. Period. But how did they do it? It's nothing abstract. It's nothing philosophical. It's real. It's nothing speculative. You just saw that your bad speech created bad situations. So you don't do that. You choose good speech that creates good situations. Simple. Noble Eightfold Path. It's not complicated. Further, the bhikkhu develops in himself the right intention while faithfully dedicating himself to the training through his relentless and persevering energy, steadily deepening his practice in seclusion, which leads him to experience dispassion and cessation, all of which culminate into the full experience of release. Right intention is samma sankappa, sometimes translated as right thought. But no, it's more than just a thought. Wanting to be free from suffering is a thought, Might even be a plan, but essentially it's a wish. Unless you infuse it with the fuel of intentionality, Cetana has to be there, that drive. No. I don't want to be angry and sad every day when I wake up. I have to set the right intention when I open my eyes first. Can you say I love you to yourself in the morning when you wake up? There's nothing bad about that. If enough of us said those words to us in the morning, this world will be a beautiful place very quickly. When you wake up, can you say, I forgive you, despite whatever you think you're not perfect in? I don't walk right, I don't speak right, I don't look right, I don't have this, all that is hurtful. Can you say, I forgive you for thinking like that? It's okay, I forgive you. Already you set the tone. That's the right intention. Because it's going to slowly work you towards release. Vimutti does not happen without wisdom. This path is about personal wisdom, discernment. That's why it's beautiful, because nobody can take it away from you. You leave this room, you go to another room, you are not going to lose that state of release. That wisdom is yours. That's it. That's why it's transformative. It's personality change, 100%. 100%. 3, he develops in himself right speech and communication while faithfully dedicating himself to the training through his relentless and persevering energy. That is key. If you notice, it's repeating. Relentless and persevering energy. You have to make sure you have enough fuel for yourself. for what matters to you. Steadily deepening his practice in seclusion. This is another thing. Sometimes many people think about Kalyanamittas as a group with whom you have a sense of belonging. There's some elements of that, yes. But what that is used for is to push away the importance of being secluded also. They run away from seclusion. They don't like it. So they like companionship. That is opposite of this Dhamma. That leads us back to samsara. That leads us back to suffering, to the cycles of rebirth and pain, birth, death, birth, death, birth, death. Seclusion is where the noise becomes less and less, and the sound of wisdom, if you will, appears to you. Nobody's ever attained levels of wisdom without being secluded. You don't have to take my word for it. Look at any avenue of your life, anything, any subject you studied, any work you've ever done. No one can deny the importance of having some time being secluded with that, to study it, to work on it, to perfect it. Even actors. When I was to do stage acting, to learn the lines, to really get into that emotional state of the character, we had to go backstage and really become the part. By the time I would come out of onto stage, I was already in shambles. I was already a mess, emotional mess, because I was in the character. But I could never have done that without giving myself the seclusion I needed. And this is for something as superficial as acting. It is superficial, Lord Buddha says clearly. But again, the endeavor, that's what I'm referring to here. The work to perfect a skill, a craft even, requires us to have seclusion. And that's what the Kalyānamitta must help you to bring into your life more and more. 4, he develops in himself right action while faithfully dedicating himself to the training through his relentless and persevering energy, steadily deepening his practice in seclusion, which leads him to experience dispassion and cessation, all of which culminate into the full experience of release. So if you can recall, while you're going through the Noble Eightfold Path, in this case, right action, samma kammanta, can you just drop tiny little drop of mindfulness to you, a thought that, this action, even though I think it might not be that related, but in fact, because I'm coming from a place of metta, a place of understanding and relevancy to the Dhamma, even this meaningless seeming menial effort or inaction, the action I'm doing, the deed I'm doing, even that is taking me towards a state of release. Wow. This way you can keep maintaining that North Star, that GPS in the crosshairs. And essentially what you would also be doing is practicing sati throughout. That's what this means. Because we can't practice Noble Eightfold Path without sati being there. But it's not a separate thing. That's what I'm trying to say. They come together as a package. You do one, you're doing the others. If you have right view, for example, which is the very first of the Noble Eightfold Path, and you maintain right view, then everything you do, every thought you have, every speech you communicate with, will all be correct. If you have right view. If you have samadhi, that's why Lord Buddha placed it as number 1. It's not a separate thing, please remember that. If you have right view and you maintain it throughout your behavior, you don't have to worry. Your effort will be right. Your mindfulness will be right. Your samadhi will be right. Your actions will be right. Your speech will be right. Your intention will be right. Your livelihood will be right. Your effort will be right. Why? Because you're on the right path. Done. That's why the path is called Noble Eightfold Path. They're all 8 into 1, eightfold. They folded into each other. It's like those Chinese folded fans, right? It's a one piece, but you open it up, it has multiple sides, right? But it's beautifully, elegantly placed together. Boop. So right view is the fan. Think of it like that. One piece, but you open it up, it's beautiful, like the tail of a peacock. It's got all these colorations of nobility in it. But you just have to maintain right view. So Kalyānamitta is one who can help you to maintain right view. That's what Venerable Punna Mantani Putta did with Venerable Ānanda, to show him what is right view. He develops in himself right livelihood while faithfully dedicating himself to the training through his relentless and persevering energy, steadily deepening his practice in seclusion, which leads him to experience dispassion and cessation. All of which culminate into the full experience of release. That is samma ajiva, the practice of the lifestyle, the livelihood. And don't think of it in external sense only, livelihood. Oh, the life of a bhikkhu is, oh, noble, this and that. So that's a sacred right livelihood versus my life over here as a layman. I sell newspapers, or I don't know what. So placing that measuring system again might not always be true. Because Lord Buddha in the Anguttara Nikaya talks, there's so many suttas where Lord Buddha is tearing up the false bhikkhus at his time. This was happening even at this time. And he was criticizing, he was chastising, he was scolding, putting a very clear demarcation line between the good bhikkhu and the many, many bad bhikkhus. Why? Because their livelihood was wrong, Buddha says. Lord Buddha says that. In the Anguttara Nikaya, you have countless suttas. I translated those suttas. So livelihood, comparing yours with a bhikkhu's doesn't necessarily mean it is the last word in a sense, because how is that livelihood? From the outside, it might look like, yeah, it's noble. No, the intentionality and the work that you're doing might be far more noble than a bhikkhu's who's not, let's say. There has to be an engagement. Remember, Lord Buddha is talking to Ānanda, who's a bhikkhu, and he's referring to a bhikkhu here, okay? And he's using the word samma ajiva, the right livelihood. So a bhikkhu has to maintain right livelihood. The food we eat, it has to be geared towards the holy life, practice of the holy life, and the perpetuation of the sasana. Purity has to be lived. That's what makes the food really a true requisite, not an indulgence. Huge difference between the two. Meanwhile, you selling those newspapers, but really giving it your all and giving meaning to the work you're doing. Selling lollipops, selling apples to people. So it's the motive behind it that makes the livelihood. Of course, there's some actual crafts or jobs or professions that are completely not right livelihood, which I think you've heard me say, is that, let's say, people who sell poison, people who sell guns and weapons, and people, all those things that bring pain and suffering. Of course, that's not right livelihood. That's self-explanatory. 6, he develops in himself right effort while faithfully dedicating himself to the training through his relentless and persevering energy, steadily deepening his practice in seclusion, which leads him to experience dispassion and cessation, all of which culminate into the full experience of release. Cessation of what? Remember, you are observing the cessation of the thing that was at one point a driving force for you. Craving was there, but craving doesn't like to look at the cessation of things, right? Craving, or the constant thirst for more, is led by greed, is led by the promise for more and more passions, more and more pleasure. That's how craving works. Every time you're opening up a new gift, gift wrapped present gets given to you, you open it, what is there? Where every time you're going to hit buy, let's say you're going to buy something on, I don't know, a website, or you're actually going to buy it at a store, there's this promise of something. Unless you're doing it with complete awareness, sati. But usually, most people, they don't have that. So they're looking at the beginning part. It's just like breathing in. So you're seeing the beginning of it, but you're dismissing the possibility that it will cease. So a person who's practicing the path of Dhamma is a person who's seeing, they see the beginning of the breath, they see the beginning of the spark, fine, but they're looking at the end. They're not fooling themselves. That is Nirodha. That is the guaranteed signature of wisdom that's taking place in you, because now you are no longer being fooled. When you see a wrinkle showing up on your forehead, on your face, or a gray hair popping in your, let's say your black hair or your normal hair, instead of panicking, you see, that is Nirodha showing up. That is a gift. I am beginning to understand. Why? Because there's also a tinge of suffering there, a tinge of dukkha there, because you're like, I wasn't expecting that. Oh, my legs don't work as good as they did. Ooh, that is part of cessation. It's showing you that nothing is stable. Why? Because underneath it all, the mechanism of delusion is the vipallasas, the distortions, the contortions, the weird things that we tell ourselves about life. We look at something that is impermanent, we say it's definitely permanent. We look at something that by nature is ugly, we say, no, it's beautiful. We look at something that is completely made out of dependent parts that are dependent on other parts, so conditionally formed, sankhara. And we say, no, you are a thing, you are an entity, you are a substantial being. All these are delusion-based. So do you see here the reality check that the Dhamma is all about? This is why you become mature. A person who practices Dhamma is not immature. It can't be. But if you notice, this also is a lot for a lot of people who want to stay immature, who want to stay at the kindergarten level, spiritually, mentally. That's why we developed so many different ideas and speculative views, because even this was too much for monks. That's why you ended up having more and more scholarly monks show up, commentators showed up. They completely deformed the Buddha's teachings. Why? To fit the palate of the masses, because the masses don't like to look at life with reality. I've jokingly talked about individuals I met over the years in America who have entire family, their whole entire family having a yearly pass to Disneyland. And one time I asked them, how much did it cost? Oh, per person? About a few thousand. Like dollars? Yeah. And that's a lot of money. Yeah, but we can go to Disneyland anytime. They completely missed what I'm trying to ask. And these are people in their 50s, by the way, huh? Like, what are you thinking? Well, I like the Cinderella, I like this, I like the two dwarfs, I like this, and Pinocchio and the rides. That is an immature person, plain and simple, wanting to maintain the state of dullness. They're not ready to wake up. They don't want to see the cessation part of life. They don't want to see dukkha at all. These are the people who love black and white, good person and bad person. That's the majority. But this path is not about just black and white. This is about understanding, cutting through the delusion. That's why this is for those who are mature enough to ask the real important questions and do something about that. Because they see that this life, from the moment of my birth, I'm actually nearing death. Every day is a miracle that I'm still alive. Why? Well, the moment you stop breathing, you're dead. That's how fickle it is. I would drive, let's say, on the freeways in Southern California. You're going very fast, 70, 75, 80 miles an hour. Among other cars, 6-lane freeways, everybody's going at that speed. The tiniest little wrong maneuver and you're dead. We forget that. But look inside your body, the circulatory system, the respiratory system, the heart beating. We forget that it's all hanging by a thread. We just take it for granted. It's a miracle that we're alive. But we must make it count for something. Not yet another birth. We've done that countless times, for countless eons, non-stop. So the Dhamma is offering us a conduit to get out of that cycle and the pain that brings. He develops in himself right concentration while faithfully dedicating himself to the training through his relentless and persevering energy, steadily deepening his practice in seclusion, which leads him to experience dispassion and cessation, all of which culminate into the full experience of release. It is therefore in this manner, Ānanda, that the Bhikkhu, who has true and genuine friends, seriously dedicates his energy to cultivating himself and thereby develops through the Noble Eightfold Path. So here you have another way of understanding, Ānanda, as to why and how having true and genuine spiritual companions is considered to be the entirety of this holy life. After all, Ānanda, it is through dependence on me as their true and genuine spiritual friend that beings who are subject to birth become fully released and liberated from ever experiencing birth again. So here Lord Buddha is saying that he is the one, the true spiritual friend. Because of him, we have access to the Dhamma. Before him, there wasn't. That's what Brahma Sahampati said when he came and he beseeched him. He asked him, he begged him, Bhante, please, it's been too long. And he had the right to say that because he had lived through eons without the Dhamma. He himself was highly developed in the Dhamma, of course, but he saw the world in its pain. And he says, Bhante, the universe has been waiting a long time for a Buddha to show up. And here you are, finally, after eons. Please don't close the door of the Dhamma. And Lord Buddha listened to him because Brahma Sampati also advocated for us. And he says, Bhante, there are beings with little dust in their eyes. They will understand. Don't worry, they will understand, because Lord Buddha was saying it's so complex, it's so deep, it's so simple, but many people will not understand. So might as well just not teach. So Lord Buddha hesitated after the awakening. And Brahma Sampati convinced him that there are some, in fact, within the crowds of beings that are ready with little dust in their eyes. And Lord Buddha scanned the universe, and he did see, in fact, the words of Brahma Sampati to be true. And that's why Lord Buddha said, open are the gates to the deathless. That already is Lord Buddha as our greatest, true, genuine spiritual friend. Beings who are destined to get sick, to decay and age, all become fully released and liberated from ever experiencing sickness, decay, and aging again. Beings who are destined to dying all become fully released and liberated from ever experiencing death again. Beings who are destined to grief, sorrow, wailing and crying, pain, depression, and anguish all become fully released and liberated from experiencing grief, sorrow, wailing and crying, pain, depression, and anguish ever again. Why? Because of the Dhamma that he has taught. His teachings help us get there. Not because we hold the teachings, we write it, we put it, we staple it on the wall, we make a painting, a beautiful statue of it, and we hang it on the wall or we worship it. That doesn't make the Dhamma what it is. It doesn't benefit us in any way to be that kind of a worshiping person. We worship the truth of the Dhamma that you carry in your heart, as taught by the Buddha. Otherwise, what we are doing is what many, many generations of Buddhists did. They took these words of Lord Buddha, calling himself as the true and genuine spiritual friend, and they made him into some kind of a god to worship, to ask for favors, to pray to, which is a human thing. It's an immature thing because it doesn't lead to wisdom, sadly, because you are begging for someone else. And Lord, this Dhamma doesn't have anything to do with begging. Therefore, Ānanda, this is yet another way of understanding as to why and how having true and genuine spiritual companions is considered to be the entirety of this holy life. Indeed. Sad, sad, sadhu. I thought it might take a shorter time, but it's a wonderful sutta, as you saw. There's very fortunately for us and time constraints, the second sutta that I mentioned, the one after this, the 45.3, SN 45.3, is the Sāriputta Sutta, where it's almost exactly the same, except for the correction that Lord Buddha made with Ānanda. You don't see it here. Let's just dive in. So it's Discourse to Sāriputta, that's the title, Sāriputta Sutta, SN 45.3. So he comes in, it's the same setup. And he says, Bhante, having true and genuine spiritual companions should truly be considered the entirety, the completeness of this holy life. That is, when one is blessed with having true and genuine friends who are authentic in their kindness, uncompromising in their goodness, and encouraging support, as well as in their unrelenting willingness to help one on the path. And Lord Buddha's response is, Sadhu, sadhu, indeed, Sāriputta. That was Lord Buddha's way of saying, so it is. So it is. I agree. You're absolutely right. And he continues, for that is truly so, Sāriputta. Having true and genuine spiritual companions is indeed to be considered the entirety of this holy life. That is, when one is blessed with having true and genuine friends who are authentic in their kindness, uncompromising in their goodness, and encouraging support, as well as in their unrelenting willingness to help one on the path. And that is, the rest is the same. So I don't want to, of course, they're all uploaded and they're on the website, mindrelease.com, the PDF. So you can, I encourage you to print them out or read them. But the explanation here that Lord Buddha gave he's saying it to an arahant. Venerable Sāriputta was already an arahant. And he was the one who kept the wheel of Dhamma rolling that was started, set in motion by Lord Buddha himself. That's another way of saying that he was the second in command, even though we didn't have that. But, the gist of the teaching, when the teacher was not there physically, he would be somewhere else, they would go to Venerable Sāriputta if he was around. Why? Because he was the living embodiment of that. So many times, Venerable Sāriputta was, you heard me mention how he was the nurse. Sometimes physically he would behave like a nurse. When he would go, everybody would leave the monastery to go on Pintapada. Venerable Sāriputta, sometimes Venerable Ānanda as well, would stay behind to sweep the floors, to go into the sick bay, wherever there might be old bhikkhus, sick bhikkhus. He would take care of them, mend their wounds, empty any spittoons if there were buckets, or they couldn't go to the bathroom, so he would assist them. That also is living the Dhamma. That also is part of right livelihood, but that also manifested in the form of assisting Venerable Ānanda when he would have so many different conflicting ideas. So he would always go to Venerable Sāriputta. And this reached its culmination when Venerable Sāriputta died at his mother's mansion, palace. She was not a Buddhist, and so she would always antagonize him. And he was in his 80s already. She had refused to accept her son's faith because it was different than the Brahmanic tradition. But she saw the power of her son. Some other time I'll tell you about the details, but basically she was so moved, and he taught her the Dhamma, and she attained to the first stage of awakening. She became a Sotapanna. And Venerable Sāriputta was in so much pain. And he was suffering from dysentery. So he was leaking blood and at his age. So he lied down on his bed and he died, surrounded by his bhikkhu students. So the news gets back to the monastery. Venerable Ānanda hears this. And he collapses. He's destroyed, as if, because his teacher died. He was second, to Lord Buddha, and he's in pain, he's crying, and Lord Buddha says, Ānanda, to console him. Lord Buddha was not pushing away the beauty that was happening, because it was also beautiful. That was showing how significant of a person that was, a Kalyānamitta, that Venerable Sāriputta was. And Lord Buddha asks him, Ānanda, you cry, but did Sāriputta take your awakening from you? Because he was saying, basically, what am I going to do now? I attained, I was developing in my understanding of Panya, this and that, because of Sāriputta. Now he's gone. And did he take any of that? Did he give that to you in the first place? He says, no, Bhante. Did he take that away? How could he take it away from you then? Earlier, I was talking about wisdom is something that occurs within the person by the person's own efforts. So Ānanda attained to those levels, even with the support of Venerable Punnamanthaniputta prior, in his earlier years. He had to be curious to understand, to really follow what Venerable Punnamanthaniputta was teaching him, and therefore attain Sotapatti. Every single person who attains is through one's own efforts at deepening one's understanding. That's why right view is number one. So his right view was not granted to him by anyone, ultimately, not even by his beloved friend, Venerable Sāriputta, who died. Now, the presence of such beautiful beings in one's life, whether they're there or not, one has to really cherish and protect. How? Through putting them into practice. In the Theravādas, if you remember, when several months ago I did cover the Ānanda Theravāda, where we went through the actual verses of the Venerable Ānanda before he died. And he was saying, the old ones are gone now. All I see are these young bhikkhus running around. And he says, what am I going to do now? What am I going to do now? Because I have no teacher left. The great one, the king of the Dhamma, has died. So did my friends. And then he corrects himself, because they're verses spoken by him at different stages of his life. And then he comes in and he says, so long as one has the body, he has the best teacher. Now, this comes from a person who had been augmented and supported by Kalyanamittas, par excellence, starting with Lord Buddha, supporting him, putting him in the right path. But ultimately, we have to be our own Kalyānamitta. That is what I am trying to encourage in you. Be supported, get the support. But ultimately, when you are secluding yourself to practice, you have the most important Kalyānamitta there with you. You. Please do not forget that. That way you can come off your training wheels. You don't need those crutches anymore. You can trust in the beauty of the Dhamma in your heart, manifested in the way that you see the unfolding, the layers coming off of the delusion and the delusional ways of living previously that you had, substituted with the wisdom that now you have. And that is the big telltale sign that you're growing, really. You don't have to tell yourself stories. You don't have to convince yourself of anything anymore. You're living the truth. And that is Dhamma. So I'll stop here and see if there are any comments or questions you might have. It's a wonderful sutta. It's a deep sutta. I highly encourage you to give it another or a few listens, and that goes actually for all the suttas we've covered thus far. Simply because we've listened to them once, or sometimes some people might look at the title and they might not like it, but that's like just a label on it. It means ultimately you have to go dig. It's your life, you know. It's your life. If you don't breathe, you die. But the real death is dying to delusion and ignorance, because that will keep us perpetually in the hamster wheel forever. So if there are no questions, let's transfer some merits. Akasatha chabumata devanaga mahiddhika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakhantu lokasasanam. Akasatha chabumata devanaga mahiddhika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakhantu desanam. Akasatha chabumata devanaga mahiddhika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakhantu mam paranti. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. May you and your loved ones be blessed by your intentions to be here to listen to the Dhamma. by your desire to practice the Dhamma in your daily life, by your actions, kusala, wholesome, skillful actions, and by your maintaining of living with the Noble Eightfold Path. May the blessings be so powerful that you experience harmony and peace in your life, and understanding develops in you, and less turmoil, less agitation, and you develop every day with the development of your own relationship with yourself, supported by the Dhamma, and constantly coming back to Lord Buddha as your great noble Kalyānamitta, as well as those rare gems that you have in your life, living, breathing Kalyanamittas. So may you be well until next time. Sukhi Hot.